Is this thing on?
And we're live. Thanks for joining us again, everybody. We're back to discuss Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Sam, Brian are here as always. And Sam, I'm going to start off by saying that really hope you've been fucking with me this entire time. I'm just going to throw that out there right
I
now.
really hope he was.
It would definitely make me sad. But I guess we'll get into that. So, I saw it launch day. Brian saw it shortly after. Sam, you saw it just today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So, I guess what initial thoughts, like overall, was it what you were expecting? Was it good, bad? Brian, go.
I mean, my initial thoughts were that it was definitely everything that I wanted it to be.
Okay. I that slightly not concerns me, but I know sometimes when things are what you expect them to be, you don't. Not that you hate them, but
Well, it's like I said whenever you were wanting to, or whenever you were talking about them doing Spider-Verse, like before they announced this project,
yeah,
that you were wanting to see that happen.
yeah,
Like I always felt like if they were going to do Spider-Verse, they couldn't do that live action.
uh-huh.
So in this situation, it being exactly what I hoped it would be, is a very good thing.
Fair enough. Okay. Sam, and again, while I'm a little worried about this, what's your take on it?
9 out of 10.
Yeah,
It was more than I was expecting.
fair enough.
Like it was, I will honestly say hands down, it's my favorite Spider-Man feature film that I have seen.
Yeah, I can agree with that statement.
Fair enough. I absolutely loved it. I was smiling the entire time. Like anytime something would happen, and whether they introduced a new character or a character that was, a reimagining from a different universe, or I don't know, man. Overall, just loved it. Loved it. Loved it. Loved it.
Also, middle-aged jaded Spider-Man is my favorite Spider-Man.
Right. So yeah, that's definitely something I want to talk about. So the long and short of it, right? And like we won't go into every single part of it, but Spider-Verse, or the dimensions basically collapse, and multiple spider people are brought into the fold, and it's more of an origin story for Miles, but he gets to experience it with more or less more experienced heroes that are in the same vein.
Also, want to add to that, it doesn't follow the same like origin story as like a lot of the other Marvel.
Yeah, it kind of does what Homecoming did, where it just drops you into it.
Yeah.
Except it still does the origin story, but it does it as like a super quick recap each time they introduce a character.
Well, more so for Miles, it does it in a I mean, it still hits on certain points that every Spider-Man has to go through, apparently, but it does it differently, and it does it in a much better way, I feel.
Well, it really works that they decided to use Miles instead of Peter.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you're going to do an origin story, using a different character is definitely the right way to do it, especially with Spider-Man, because we've seen it so many.
Yeah. And I will say, actually, what was I going to say? Sorry, you were talking about the origin story. It is slightly different, or it is slightly different than the comic books, but that's fine, right? Like they adapted it for the universe they're building, which is fine. Like I said, everything worked out. So I guess again, without taking it scene by scene, I loved the intro to more or less OG Sam Raimi Spider-Man, we'll call him. I like that they made a lot of references from those movies, right? And while it wasn't exactly Tobey Maguire's, right, I did enjoy that it more or less followed that specific storyline, right?
Yeah.
The dance part was hilarious. Like the fact that they drew attention to that just to like poke fun at it. I love that. That was fantastic.
That was anybody who's followed. It's just like a little extra cheat for those who
who've been with it for as long as they have.
when I first was watching it, I was a little confused because I was like, "Wait, why is Chris Pine doing one of the voices here? This isn't the Peter Parker I was expecting." Oh, that's why, because he dies.
Yeah, right. Um, and like I said, instead of going scene by scene, I'll kind of just take it by as characters introduced. I I'll start by saying I loved the style of the entire movie. It felt very unique, and not to say that right, just because of the style it adopted it. Right, Miles operates in this world that where he's more or less. Well, so they don't right. They don't ram it down your throats. But it's established that his family isn't necessarily well off. They entered into the lottery system that a lot of families that are not as wealthy enter into, and he gets sent to a private school, right? So like without exposition or them outright saying, hey, we're not, the most wealthy, right? They kind of get that out of the way.
Yeah.
So he operates in more of an urban area, graffiti and music that's more attuned to hip hop or rap. And I loved it. I loved not only the influence that Miles himself drew from, and his love of art and music, but just the care that the directors took to carry that style throughout, right? Like it wasn't just something specific to Miles. The entire world was built around like, hey, this is what we're presenting you, right? And it's gonna
they did a really good job with sound and color.
Yes,
that's why I liked the idea of Spider-Verse not live action, because they can really draw on all the different art styles characters come.
Yeah. Like I'll say like Kingpin, right? That's a super different like way to interpret him, but the minute he steps on screen, you're like, that's Kingpin. I know where he's at. I know more or less what he's about, right? And they did that.
I will say that Kingpin was probably my least favorite part of that, just because I absolutely hated.
You hated what?
I hated the design for King.
I liked it, dude. I thought it was an over exaggeration. Again, like I can see you maybe not liking it, but it definitely, in the world they built, like he lives in that style, and I liked it.
It felt too Despicable Me to me.
Fair enough.
Can we discuss real quick?
Go ahead.
When you see Vanessa and his child and them running away, and you're just like, I wonder what it's like to fuck a wall like that. Jesus Christ. That's the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, this is awkward.
Well,
but I try not to, because it's
Sam.
He was just. It was a gross
I've gone
exaggeration
my entire life
of his character
without knowing that, and now just thank you for that the beautiful image. I liked it. I can see why you wouldn't, Brian, and that's fine. Like I'm not saying you have to. I think it fit within what they drew from and the style.
Like it worked fine in the universe, but I would have preferred personally something that looked a little bit more imposing and less like a wall.
Fair enough.
I think it works in some shots, but on other shots it doesn't.
Like the scenes at the end with him and Miles work really well.
Fair enough.
Really?
I thought so. Because like Miles is really small in comparison.
That's true. Okay.
So it makes it seem more like a underdog thing.
Okay. I will say they did a really good job. Well, okay, so I love the scenes with him and his uncle, right? Again, very, very good storytelling, right? Without having to explicitly say that the uncle, Aaron, was involved in less than reputable things, right? But
yeah,
Miles looked up to him and respected him and wanted that affection, right? That he didn't necessarily think he could get from his own father. So I love the scenes with Aaron in the beginning. It's Davis, right? Aaron Davis.
Yeah.
Okay, don't want to get that wrong. The graffiti that he presented was really cool, and I liked that they presented his struggle with being more or less feeling out of place. Applies on both levels, right? From a social standpoint, being in the new school, right, and feeling like he doesn't belong, and then as a spider hero, I thought that was mixed in pretty well. And I like the brief moments that he shared with that universe's Spider-Man, right? When they both
Yeah.
realized that they were part of a team, and Miles finally found this sense of comfort when he was after he was freaking out about the powers, and he was like, oh man, like maybe this won't be so bad, and then he dies, which was pretty sad.
I
like
thought
like that
I
was
thought
done
that
really well.
that was my favorite line as far as the responsibility aspect of him becoming Spider-Man
Which was
was whenever he was like, I just want to be a normal kid. I don't think you really have a choice.
right, like more or less just saying, hey, like at this point you just got to keep moving forward. No, it was a great interaction, and again, for something that only lasted for, I don't even know, less than a minute, right? Great interaction.
It was great establishment for
Yeah,
how short those characters interacted with each other.
Yeah,
yeah.
and
That's what I was gonna say. Is it's very it it feels like they actually took the time to write a decent script and flush out the entire atmosphere, but also like the interactions, because I do like that uh his father and Aaron don't get along. Like
yeah,
that's a real thing that happens. Is
yeah,
families don't get along very well.
Yeah.
yeah,
So
and
it just
Or
works really.
kids drift apart from their parents, so like it all feels very real.
yeah, and again, right, I think it hits both aspects. Miles's regular social life, right? He turns to Aaron because, right, he feels like he can't turn to his father, and then as a Spider Person, right, he found the solace in basically their universe's Peter Parker. And granted, that doesn't last, but right at a time when he's freaking out, it's comforting to him. And
Right.
When Kingpin killed him, yeah, and I was definitely like, oh man, like what's like you feel the weight of it, because all of a sudden Miles is like he's given this brief like taste of hope, right, and then just torn from him. And
Like if you somehow manage to go into this movie knowing that there are going to be multiple Spider-Men,
mm-hmm.
then killing off Peter Parker at the beginning of the movie would be bold.
Right,
I
exactly.
was I was really confused because for whatever reason I remember like trailers and shit very well, and so I'm like, wait, what? Okay, where does like the sneak peek at the end of Venom? I'm like, when does this come in? Like, it just
they
I
also
was really
they
confused.
also hid that really well, because all the trailers I saw, I was really confused as to why they had drawn Spider-Man that way. I was like, what's
Yeah.
going on, right? So yeah, they definitely hid that, right? Like the fact that I thought they were going to move into the universe, and Peter Parker was going to already be dead, but the fact that he wasn't, the fact that he, you know, existed at least for a short period of time and had an interaction with the characters and had an impact on the characters, I think was really well done. They kept that one kind of close to them, and no, it was good.
Also, to go back to the Aaron part, I
Uh-huh.
really like the fact that they had Prowler,
Not having Prowler in it was great.
because bringing in a new villain like that was a good call. Especially, it works really well with the Ultimate Spider-Man since they're related.
Right.
But just I was really happy to see Prowler, because Prowler is probably one of the better low tier villains that
Villains.
Spider-Man has.
Yeah. I will say I laughed when they didn't make a super big deal out of the bite initially. Right. He was tagging, and the spider's on his hand. And normally, I feel like in a lot of the movies, he gets bit and there's like a or an ooh, or a, right, like, yeah. And he was just like, meh, like just like popped it off. Um, quick interlude before we kind of move through some more of the characters and kind of the good of. I'm not gonna lie. There's not gonna be much bad in this movie, at least for me. Like,
There's
I
not a
can't.
whole lot
Right.
bad.
It's
Side
the
note:
end.
I saw some debate online. What's the spider's origin? Like, for me, I thought it was just. I remember them mentioning they tested it before, right? Or they're running tests. So, in my
Oh,
Yeah.
opinion, as the result of those tests, that spider was some
pulled from
more or less
different.
afflicted by some sort of
Uh,
dimensional thing. Because people were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, well, the spider's glitching." Well, maybe he came from maybe he was sent from a different universe. And I was like, I don't know if I feel like that. I think just the standard, you know,
uh,
they were
I would I would agree with that
okay.
Yeah.
because
Well, I mean, it
he,
clearly originated from the lab.
Yeah, because it had 42 on
Yeah,
its back, which 42 kept showing up throughout the entire movie, which was really odd as
interesting.
well.
I'll take a look at that.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Obviously,
Maybe.
it's the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Okay. So okay, back to it. I love that. And then Spider-Man's death too, man. Like that was a really they played that for I think what it was what it should have been. Like so we'll reference, you know, the death of Superman and fucking BBS or whatever, right? No established characters, right? He had one movie before, not too much to kind of actually be sad about, especially because the whole dirt thing, like, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
I think the fact that they borrowed and kind of said, hey, imagine this Spider-Man as your Sam Raimi Spider-Man, right? You can kind of quickly retrace those steps. So for him to die like that, saving the city, and for it to be in that universe, and then all of a sudden, oh, hey, we found out he's Peter Parker, and here's his wife, Mary Jane, girlfriend. I don't remember if they were married. I think they married in there. Yeah, you know, right? The whole city was sad, right? The even the little like Miles going out and buying the suit, and Stanley being right the store owner.
That was such a good Stan Lee cameo
Yeah, it was.
too.
It was a really good one. But
I don't know if it just hits harder because of the fact that he just passed away.
It might.
It does.
But it was really solid.
But they gave it the time it needed, right? They established a back for him, and I don't know, man. Like it didn't feel cheap, and it didn't feel like I said, I didn't like if I compared it to the Superman one, just because it's the most recent. It didn't feel like that. It felt good, and you know what that scene reminded me of, Brian, and spoilers for another show if you haven't kept up with My Hero Academia. Sorry, it reminded me of that scene. Remember when?
Which one?
Well, so Mary Jane was talking out to the crowd, and Miles like felt like she was talking directly to him. For me, it mimicked that Midoriya scene after All Might and All for One fight.
Oh yeah,
right. Like I don't know. For me, it felt like that, and it felt just as impactful. Right, he internalized it, and then they made a joke about it. Well, not necessarily you directly, but it's more of a metaphor. Like that was funny, but I liked that scene. Okay, so that happens. Spider-Man died, and then he tries to. I do think it's cool that what
the Stan Lee line. I wanted to point out that it's another one of those lines that I think is really good in the movie. Whenever he's handing him the costume, it says that it'll always fit eventually.
Oh yeah, no, that was good.
It definitely felt like a jab at Stan Lee because I've heard bad things about Stan Lee, but at the end it ties together. Like he talks about the suit, but at the end Miles talks about the mask. So it's actually interesting that it comes together.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's funny, before we keep going, I thought it was funny when his dad was talking about Spider-Man, and didn't he say like with great ability comes great responsibility or something like that?
Yeah.
And Miles was like, just stop the saying, Dad. I thought that was funny. I don't know. So we talk about this in other movies. I don't know, what was the movie that I was there was a movie we talked about where I was like they do the interpersonal relationships really well. Black Panther with like T'Challa and
everybody.
What's it? No, his
T'Challa and the crew.
No, his sister's name.
Shuri.
Shuri, yeah. Like that was done really well. And Miles' interactions with his family, his dad, his mother, and Aaron, his uncle, great. Like, felt super. I don't know, just real, right? Like
authentic.
Authentic is the right word. The car ride, the awkwardness between the him and his dad, the mother.
I really liked that scene a lot.
Which one? When he dropped them off?
The part where he drops them off at the school.
That was in the preview, and I still laughed my ass off when it happened.
Because we've all gone through that.
No, so it's super relatable, the whole embarrassing stuff.
Legitimately every part of that movie that was in the trailers that I laughed at, I still laughed at in the.
Oh yeah, no, it's in the context was super funny.
it's everything's so well done. Like, really, that was my biggest concern with this movie, was because it wasn't the live action film, that it
Uh-huh.
wasn't gonna care that the other Spider-Man films have.
Yeah.
So I was happily surprised being
Right.
so much better, or could
Um,
be.
I'll say for me, um, so here are the little details about stuff I liked. So in his universe, right, in Miles' universe, um, the comic books weren't called like the Amazing, or what were the original Spider-Man was like Fantastic Tales, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in his universe, it was the real stories of Spider-Man, which is cool. Like I thought that was like a nice little nod. And
Yeah.
then the fact that he pulls from the comics, and I think those pages were authentic, right? Like those were the pages from
I think so. I
that
mean, I'd have
comic.
to go back and look at
Yeah, I'd have
them.
to double check, but like it was drawn in that style, and it
They
like
were definitely drawn in the right
yeah,
style for it.
that was cool. The fact that he was like, well, there's these comic books about him. I'm gonna read them to see if I can figure it out. Like I don't know. I thought that was awesome. Even little things
Yeah.
like that. Um, and then right, he feels bad because he doesn't think that he can, you know, carry the mantle forward, right? And that's when he meets the middle-aged, jaded
Middle-aged jaded
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, and even
I gotta
him.
say, his voice, or the voice actor Jake Johnson,
Mhm.
that was such a good cast for
No,
him.
Yeah,
that was great. I
yeah.
think they borrow from there. I imagine there are even a handful of comic book series of Spider-Man where him and Mary Jane don't end up together, and a lot of it is based off. They pull from pieces of that, right? Where he
Yeah.
couldn't.
Well, I think mainly the thing is, like, they always end up together at some point.
Fair enough. But yeah, they don't always like get together and then live happily ever after, more or less, right?
Yeah.
Especially when what's his face is dead in Gwen Stacy's universe. That's not going to
Right.
happen.
Yeah.
I loved all the quick backgrounds, right? Like, okay, so let's
I
right,
loved.
so they flashback to it,
He's like, save the city a few times.
right?
Save the city some more, probably a bit too much.
I will say I liked it, and seeing a different take, right? So this goes, and right, we won't get into it too much, right? I just want to reference seeing different aspects of what the character could be, right? Like people got all upset about, oh, Luke shouldn't be jaded and blah 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 from Star Wars, but they presented Spider-Man in a similar way, right? Like just
Yeah.
because you start out a certain way, just because you buy into this,
Like, it really goes into the whole you're shaped by your experience.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
And
his
the
was
fact
different.
that you don't see those experiences, especially in Skywalker, is
Mm-hmm.
probably what people about. Like, if they saw the backstory that led up to that, they probably wouldn't care as much.
Or well, no,
Or
it's
no, I
because
mean, if they
fanboys
just paid
fanboys want
if they
what
just
they
paid
want.
attention.
Yes.
You
Um,
said it.
but
I don't care.
I liked what they did with
But I,
his Spider-Man, and because it never came off as like right, even though he was kind of standoffish to Miles, right? In another way, it was kind of like, yeah, I don't want to
he
do it.
wasn't doing it to be a jerk. He was more doing it because he was like, "This is what I got to do, and you don't really need to worry about it."
Yeah, like I'm just gonna take care of it more or less.
Yeah.
Um, but his interaction with Miles was cool. Um, I love I love the when he's like, all right, all right, so teach me how to swing, right? And then they get on the bus, and he's just like, trust me, I'm saving your legs. You'll thank me later. Like that was, and then it was a recurring thing moving
Yes.
forward. They were taking the bus, even when they were all in the universe. Like that made me laugh because he was like, see, I know better, kind of shit, right? I
I
thought,
love the fact that they just kept poking the fact that now.
right. Um, oh, part of the thing we skipped was Miles's experience with the school. That more or less, you know, allows the younger audience to kind of, oh hey, I know what it's like to be an outsider, to be in an environment that doesn't necessarily feel welcoming. But I will say, the other thing I liked about that was they played with a fear that I think young people now probably more so. I definitely personally experienced it. This fear of, and maybe I'm missing movies that, talk about it. I don't see every movie, right? But I liked what they did with his character. He was scared of like meeting expectations, right? That he wasn't worthy of not only the Spider-Man mantle, right, outside of that, but just, his parents put him through, he won the lotto, right, with no consequence of his own, right? All he did was pass a test, right? And then it's like, oh, hey, you passed it. Here, you get a shot.
It was like a situation of everybody else had high expectations of him, and he had no expectation of himself.
Yeah, and then, like, once he's thrust into that opportunity, he doesn't want to let people down, right?
Yeah.
And I think that plays to a lot of things that people do experience in life. Like I said, me personally, I felt that. Maybe other movies have done it. I personally haven't seen any of them, right? So, for all I know, I'm wrong. That, a bunch of movies have done it recently. But I think that was a really interesting thing because that motive carried throughout, right? With his
I think the bigger portion of that is, even if a lot of films have been doing it, most of them haven't as well.
That's fair. Yeah, no, this one
most
definitely.
of those films would have been geared towards kids, and most kid films these days haven't been that great.
Right.
No, and definitely not on par like this.
Yeah, and that motive was woven really well throughout the story, right? Throughout all of his interactions with the other spider heroes, with his parents, with the school, right? Expectations from his uncle, right? Like, so at least in my opinion, right? If we don't talk about the school that much, I think it does serve a good kind of structure for that conflict that he has, right? It's cool that he meets Gwen Stacy there. I was super glad to see her in this universe. Miles had some funny moments in there, right?
Let me tell you. Oh,
what
can I say about Gwen Stacy?
Yeah,
because like up until this point, the two guys are doing a sloppy job about all of this, and then Gwen Stacy comes in and is like, bam, 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 bam.
Yeah, that's fair.
On point
and
that's
everything.
She's like, I got this.
Yeah, and it's funny, and I'm waiting for that one YouTuber to be like, there's demasculating. I'm just waiting for it. I want to see it.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah,
I know.
We'll have to
it's
watch
dumb,
that. Right?
But no, I really did appreciate that. I was like, yeah, she's fucking.
I'm glad that they made her every bit as badass in the movie as she is in the comic books.
Yeah,
yes,
no,
yes.
And I loved being able to see her costume. I fucking love, and I love the art style in the comic. And like you touched on, Brian, they very distinctly brought those styles into, right? She fits into Miles' universe, but there's just enough of an inflection of Spider-Gwen.
Well, she's got like a little bit more of a neon flair to it,
and that's cool. No,
like her comics
and her and even her origin, right? So real quick, right? Her origin had that super heavily influenced from her universe, which is cool. Like they didn't have to do that much detail, and they did. But right before she gets introduced, I will say I loved. So again, right, I loved the universe's take on characters. I didn't expect the whole Doc Ock thing. In the Office. So,
Thank you.
So one.
Yeah, that was a little surprising.
Great scenes, right? I thought they were hilarious. Peter's hitting on her, and then she like, oh, I want to examine you, and she's like, oh, you're gonna die. Well, I'm gonna watch this, and then like he slowly pieces together.
Yeah, who are you?
Damn. And again, right?
Yeah.
She's very recognizable, the tentacles, but they have their own flair to it. There's something different about it for this universe.
It's a wonderful design.
And I thought it was funny that Miles was running around with the computer, and when he finally catches up to him, he's like, we don't need this.
Good news. We
Throws
don't
the
need
monitor away. Like, I don't know. Just like little things like that. That, and I laughed my ass off when they walked through the cafeteria and he grabs his bagel, and all the scientists bust out like machine guns, and one of them's like, "You stole a bagel!"
It's like my cabbages. That's what it reminds me.
It was super funny. Like, and again, right? Like normally they'd walk through that cafeteria, right, and the scientists might run away or whatever. No, in this universe and in this facility, Kingpin's facility, it would make sense that they're like, "Oh no, we're gonna fuck you up. Like, we're ready for this, and I like that. Again, very original take on a common scenario in not only superhero movies but just action movies in general. So that was funny.
Enjoyed it.
But yeah, so they go through.
And now he was singing his song whenever he was trying to calm himself down.
Yeah. Or he tried to mirror Spider-Man, how he came down, and it just Spider-Man's animation was very fluid. Miles's was very jerky, and
it was fluid, but it was still a little sloppy because yes, he's been doing it for so long, but he's also really Hobo Spider-Man.
Clearly out of practice.
Yeah.
I
did like
the way that they portrayed him. Makes me laugh.
Well, and everything he said came true, right? He wasn't just being a dick about it. Like, trust me, you'll learn like better if you have to do it life or death. And then, oh hey, look, life or death situation. Guess what? You gotta just fucking figure it out. Like, again, kind of a little condescending, but not in a way that's like, go fuck yourself. It's like, hey, yeah, we can drill this for, hours at a time, and yeah, you'll eventually get it. But chances are you're going to be shot at by someone in this line of work. Chances are you're going to have to run away from someone in this line of work. So what better time to learn than when, it's do or die, right? So,
but it's also the end when he asks how he'll know when he's ready. It's like it's a leap of faith.
Right. So I like that. The brief interactions with him and Gwen, right, both at the school, and then in the forest and on the bus. I did like the "you don't get to like my hair" line. Was funny because it was his fault. But their interactions didn't feel forced, right? There's some chemistry there, right? And they could go the romantic way. They could just go the friends way, right? They didn't.
Well, I mean, at one point they get married in the comic.
Well, yeah, and the thing I liked about it is, but it's that universe is Gwen Stacy, not a different one. So a little different. But I do like that they didn't just like, oh, hey, you're a female spider person, you're a male spider person, you're just going to start, like, dating. Like, no. Gwen carries her own baggage from her universe, right? They never let you forget, hey, her Peter Parker friend died, so she's kind of closed off, right? Like, yeah, she cares about Miles, but to the extent that, like, right, they always bring up, they don't feel alone now that they know the universes exist, right? So she cares about him because, like, oh, someone exists that understands that what I've gone through, the loss I've experienced, the uncertainty of mastering these powers and having to save those around me, right? Like, so they establish that that's important, but they never let her, like, forget that she has her own baggage, just like everyone else that Miles is introduced to. So I like that. Right.
Yeah. Unlike fucking, what was that? How to Train Your Dragon 4 or whatever? Fuck that movie.
What? They've only had 2.
There have been 3.
There's 3, whatever.
3.
There's a new one. There's a new one coming out. And
that's number 3.
And guess what?
I'm fairly certain it's already out.
No, it was 1 with the big dragon. 2 was his mother. 3, this one's with the white Night Fury.
But also, Sam, how dare you say anything bad about?
Yeah, don't fucking. How dare you?
That film is a treasure.
It's not that great, as everybody says.
Okay, we're gonna have to discuss this at another time because I disagree with that, Sam. I disagree with that statement. It's great.
Not that great.
I have to agree with John on.
I don't care.
Right. Okay, so they move forward. Interactions are good. We'll say. Am I missing anything else?
No, we're pretty much at the point where, like, they meet
the rest of the spider people.
Lily Tomlin. Yeah.
Okay. So, my brother brought up a good point. 1, that Aunt May is awesome. 2, she very much, at least in our opinion, mirrored a more Madam Web style character, which is interesting. Okay, so y'all got that vibe too? Okay, cool. I thought that was dope, especially when she was sitting in the chair. I love that.
I mean, it was probably intentional.
No, and that's great. Again, right? The people behind the story said, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we reference this not obscure character?"
If they're doing it, it wouldn't surprise me if they just want her to be like Madam Web.
Yeah, right. So let's talk about the spider people. I loved all of them. I loved
before that. Just gotta say shout out to Lily Tomlin for playing Aunt May.
Fair enough.
Okay. Fair.
So let's talk about the Spider People. So we've talked about bitter, jaded Spider-Man.
This is where like you really get to see the art styles brought together.
Yes. We got our bitter, a little chubby Spider-Man. We've got our neon-inspired badass Gwen Stacy. I was super concerned with Nick Cage being cast as Spider-Noir, but man, like
I was not, because the last superhero thing is Kick-Ass or in Kick-Ass.
No, it wasn't. Well, it was Teen Titans Go.
That's fair.
Was it?
But even
you're right.
But even then, he did good in that too. Like I didn't mind.
Yeah.
So you know what?
Sometimes,
hey, maybe that Nick Cage Superman movie wouldn't have been so bad.
Well,
sometimes
I was talking to someone about it, and like Nick Cage, there's only two ends of the spectrum. There's not really any.
Right.
So it's either terrible or great.
Right.
Or it's terrible because it's great.
No. But the
or
voice.
Or great because it's terrible. I mean.
Right. The voice matched the character perfectly, and I loved his backstory and.
Sometimes.
Nazis.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Then remember they were like, "Where's that wind coming from?" And he's like,
"Where's the wind coming from? Where are they?"
Like that was super funny.
Sometimes I light a match and let it burn out till it hits my fingers so I can feel something.
Like wherever I go, the wind.
Oh my god. That was that was amazing. I loved that. And then seeing Penny Parker and the more anime style inspired.
She was like so over the top,
and it was awesome. I loved every second of it.
It was ridiculous. And she had how many different anime like weeb phrases did she throw in that first 5 seconds?
Right. And then like for a robot controlled by a spider, that robot, man, like I loved all the expressions on it, right? Like just super fitting.
You know everybody's gonna be like, yo, they got that from
Diva.
Was it Diva and
they can fuck
that
off.
Other character was
fuck those people.
Wrecking Ball.
Right.
No. The giant robot with the 4 legs.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And then man, I've been wanting it. And you know what? They could not have picked a better person to bring me Spider-Ham and to make my life complete. John Mulaney did a great job. Great delivery. Great lines. The animation was awesome.
I just washed my hands.
God damn.
That's what.
Oh my god. I can't. Yeah. I've just been waiting.
I don't know if you watched that interview or not.
Yeah, no. With his lines. Yeah, with his
where he's talking about where they were telling him about the character and how we just want you to play a guy that just makes old, outdated jokes.
He was
like, I got this.
Right. Seeing them all brought together was awesome. And seeing that spider layer, that's a guy I haven't seen a spider layer like that in a while.
It's like Batman, but with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So it's a spider.
Oh, and then when Miles saw the Spider-Man with the cape, and he was like, like that. I enjoyed that.
What was the thing that he said that Jake Johnson's character said to him? He was like, if you don't wear a cape, you're a disgrace to Spider-Man.
Right. So yeah,
and he had a Spider-Mobile.
Oh, dude, I had one of those. I had a Spider-Mobile with a web flip forward when it ran into something. Yep. I was like, I own that. I owned that useless piece of fucking technology because Spider-Man can web swing. But, whatever. That's fine. They had a lot of callbacks. I enjoyed that.
It was really...
but at this part of the story, again, right, so we'll switch to something a little more story-related. This part of the story, they continue that whole theme of expectations, right? Like... more or less these characters have been established, right? And they've saved their universes, right? And Miles is not his. This is his origin, and right, he wants to be a part of it, and he wants to fulfill his promise to Peter of this universe. And even though the guys want nothing but the best for him, right? They keep saying, like you said, Brian, like he can't control his powers, he can't on command handle the situation.
He just doesn't really know what he's doing.
Yeah, and again, very relatable feeling, both for younger and older people.
I love the part whenever Peter's introducing him and he's like, he can turn invisible, but I can't do it on command. But he can't do it on command.
He's trying to slaps roof, right? Like more or less. No, that was great. And again, great delivery across the board. Then this is when we first get to see Prowler really right in action after he leaves, right? Doesn't get chased. Man, those scenes were great. Like the neon lighting. I
love the design for Prowler. It's just so.
The neon lighting and the choreography was done really well. That whole chase scene I thought was great. Again, that goes more down to the art style, but I had no problems with it. I loved it throughout.
We didn't even talk about the fact or the scene where Peter gets knocked out when he runs Miles and Miles is swinging around web shooter from
like in the trailer?
The unconscious body.
Oh yeah, what did you say? The police scanner was like a kid in a Spider-Man costume and a dead
carrying a
dead hobo. Yeah, and then the scene where he gets dragged across the window with the snowman on his face—that still made me laugh. I died laughing. That was super funny. I love that. Yeah.
Just all the web swing was just done so well.
Yeah.
And I think that it really comes to it pops out in a way that it can't with live action.
Right.
Yeah.
So
you can't get like those exaggerated angles and stuff.
Right.
They were smart to make it not live action.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've hit on a lot of the characters that were introduced. Trying to think of what happened after that, just so I don't miss anything that I particularly enjoyed.
That was the part where he ran off, and then he comes back, and they're all fighting all the with, like Scorpion.
Dude,
and...
so that was cool too to see. So who was the character? Who was Kingpin's assistant?
Tombstone.
Guy? Was it Tombstone?
It's Tombstone.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
How did you not know that? I'm surprised.
Because he was just like a normal. So I will say.
Because he didn't say anything.
Yeah, I don't know.
He did. He had like.
Scorpion's design was really cool.
Scorpion's design.
I thought that was badass.
It was random.
Yeah. I know.
I do agree that I liked Doc Ock's a lot.
Yeah.
Really good.
Fighting in the house is cool, and one of my favorite funny moments when everybody's getting thrown into things and smashing them, and then Spider-Ham grabs a plate and just smashes it over his head. I loved that part. I was just dying. But the choreography was done really well. The spiders each spider person had their own unique style. I did like that Spider Noir was just like just trying to like bare knuckle box people. It's just like right, just bring it up. I don't remember what he says specifically, but I just remember laughing because he was just like he's like, I'm gonna clean your clock or something. I don't know. I can't remember specifically, but
I don't remember exactly. I just know that they were great.
Yeah, and again, we get to see them fight. It's a small enclosed space. Again, not very much. Which you don't see very often, and we kind of got to see everybody, more or less, in their own styles. And again, right, Miles doesn't miraculously start like throw down with someone, right? He's still kind of scared and caught off guard, and
yeah, again, like the whole time he's being chased around by Prowler, he's just trying to keep them away from the
Chip. And even Spider-Man, and that's the thing, that's what I liked about the new Spider-Man character, right? Or alternate Spider-Man. Right, as much as he's trying to sell Miles to the group, and as much as he, right, as much as the issues he carries from his universe, like the whole time he's still trying to tell Miles to just run, right? Like he's taking hits, he's diverting attacks, right? He's like, dude, like I know that you want to be a part of this. I know you've got a promise to fulfill, like, but you have to run, and like that's cool. Also, I do like the play-by-play that he gives through a lot of stuff, like when I think he's like explaining it, he's like, oh, believe me, this is nothing, right? Like the whole universe exploding or whatever. Like he's like,
yeah,
oh, this happens from time to time, right?
Like, and then he's like, I was lying back then.
Right? Yeah, he was like, I've heard all this before, but then he was like, yeah, he was like, I've actually never heard this in my life. I don't know. It was funny, um, dude, and I was surprised. I was surprised that they killed off Prowler.
Yeah, I
you
mean, I
saw,
wasn't really surprised, but
yeah,
like it had to happen because it was his uncle.
Right.
yeah, it was really a lot of this was telegraphed, but it was telegraphed and done well.
Yeah.
So even though you saw it coming,
Yeah.
So,
it's still
so one of the things I liked about
The
this
movie just did a good job of keeping you in the moment, so you didn't really think too much about what was coming.
Right, fair enough. So here's another aspect I liked about this movie, in opposed to all the other Spider-Man origin stories they've done, and even other hero origin stories. Right. So the the death of Aaron Davis was multifaceted. Like, it had multiple layers to it. Like, so yes, so um, Miles, right, discovered his uncle's Prowler, the guy that he confided in, right. So now he's scared, right. Not only that, his dad doesn't like Spider-Man, right? So this Spider-Man identity that he has is in constant jeopardy with the ones that he, would in theory most want to turn to.
Yeah.
But man, when he runs away with his uncle's body, and even before then, you can tell that the animation team did a great job in portraying Aaron's horror, right? Not only did he almost kill his nephew that he loves and adores, right? But they show it really well that not only was he horrified by that, he's horrified that the nephew that he loves sees him like this, right?
Yeah.
That had it not been Miles, that he probably would have killed whoever was in that suit, and
Yeah.
he never wanted him to see that part of him, right? Like, he always wanted to portray this, like, confident, like, you can come to me with whatever you want. I'll never hurt you. I'm not a good person. Miles knew he wasn't. He was involved in some weird stuff, but never like, I'm going to murder someone, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, like I said, it hit on multiple fronts, right? Miles wasn't the only one living in that moment. Aaron was feeling his own issues in that moment. And then when his brother, Miles' dad, sees the body, right, and has his own reaction, he has his problems too, right? Now all of a sudden, the brother that he was, distant from, and, he kept around more or less because his son needed that person in his life. Not only is he now have a brother that he'll never be able to, find closure in. And not that Aunt May didn't have issues when Uncle Ben died, but it's a different experience when Aunt May and Uncle Ben have been together for forever, right? They're towards the end of their life. This is a person, late 30s, early 40s, right? Still has a lot of life to live and still wants to reconcile with his brother. Now he never can. And then now he has to tell his son that the person that you could confide in is gone, right? And
it leaves behind a lot of unfinished business that Ben didn't.
Yeah, and man, like I said, so many things happened right in those few seconds, and then even those few minutes, and right, very different than your Batman origin story or your Superman or your even the other iterations of Spider-Man.
Like, just the difference. Yeah, if you just look at the difference, Peter and Ben, and because like with Ben, he pretty much passed everything along to Peter that he needed.
Right.
And you didn't really get that same thing with Aaron because both of those characters were conflicted. They didn't.
Right. So, no, great moments moving forward, and then when they're in his apartment or in his dorm, more or less. Sorry, they'll skip over the part where all the spider characters are in there, but just to continue on this tangent of the emotional part, right? Like, Miles is embarrassed to say he loves his dad, and right, but when he physically can't, is when he would probably most want to, right, to comfort his father and let him know it's going to be okay, right? Super small, right? It finishes that line right there, and I loved it. It's very tantamount to his development as a character. Sam, did you have anything to add? Sorry, I fucking just went on a spree there, and I just love this movie.
There's a lot of good parts. Nothing extra.
Okay. But when they're all in his dorm, same thing, right? It's still super funny when they're sneaking around the roof, and Spider-Ham's just like, "Is this a universe where animals talk?" And I don't know. Still funny. Oh, and how Spider Nor was confused by the Rubik's Cube because he could only see it in black and white, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the joke. But again, the characters give Miles a chance, right? More or less to say, hey, like you've got to prove to us that you can do this. Otherwise, we're gonna leave you here. And again, nothing personal. And
Yeah.
you know, again, Miles feels bad because someone's got to
like,
stay back and die. Like there's other implications
the
there.
way that Peter's like wrapping him up in the chair, he's doing it. Like, it's just so casual about it.
Yeah, because he's done it.
It's just like this isn't something personal. We're just doing it for your own good.
Yeah, that was a great scene between them two, right? And again, Miles is he feels like he's letting everyone down. He feels like he should be fulfilling his promise and helping these people, so one of them doesn't have to stay back and die. But he just he can't, right? Like he just physically can't. It's outside of his control. And I liked how the other characters, when they swung off to let Miles like have a one-on-one with Peter, they were still just waiting, right? And they were hoping, they're like, maybe this is the time that he can show that he can hold his own. And they felt bad when he couldn't, right? Again, it hammers home that like this is not a personal thing. Like we want what's best for you, right? So that was cool. I liked when he was able to channel the electricity to get out, and then he went to see Aunt May, and I think the other thing that's interesting is Miles is always putting his own style on stuff, which they carried throughout. So even him spray painting the costume, right, and having his shoes, that was cool. And man, seeing his comic, his issue number 1 slapped on top of everyone's else, right? Like it's his turn to take over. That was really satisfying. Like it was a cool right. They kept pushing it, right? And you see his development.
I think that led up to my favorite scene in the
which was
when they were playing the What's Up Danger, and they were learning to wall crawling and everything.
Oh, when he was like just jumped off the building and was swinging and everything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I thought that like artistic, the best part of
it. That was a great like just series of him getting comfortable, and then the music paired really well.
And I loved when he was jumping the building and diving to the street, flipped upside. Like just the way that looked, it's the change in perspective.
No, it was great. And even in that, right, like they were wordless, like right, like they told a story even within that, right? When he dove, right, he doubled down and was like, I'm gonna go even faster, right? And he shot his web up, and he was like, I'm not gonna, right? Him being like, hey, it's either gonna catch or it's not, right? Like, and right, I'm either gonna swing, this is gonna end horribly, but right, leap of faith, here we go, right? I'm gonna trust in my instincts, and
it's so well,
and
those, like, I personally thing for that part of these Spider-Man first showing these characters web swinging. So just the way that they traded it, just so much better, because it again do things that couldn't do in action.
Right. Fair enough. So
and personally, like, as excited as I am for Far From Home, more excited for another.
That's fair. So that touches on a point that I want to hit on at the end of it, because I do want to get your guys' opinion on this. But we'll move forward again in the story, and not to again nitpick it or play by play it, even though we kind of end up sort of doing it, but not as bad. It's just there's so much good in this movie, right? And again, we're talking more about the underlying story rather than like scene by scene. But keeping it in with the characters bringing their own baggage, even the short interaction with Peter and this universe's Mary Jane at the party, right? Like
it was really good.
Yeah.
And like
it's a believable thing.
Did a good part. It was a good point for his character. I think it's hope they don't just have to be miserable all the time.
Right. Yeah, he saw her in a life where he was dead
forever.
Yeah. And his interaction with her
just kind of reminded that he did have something he cared about to fight for.
Right. And then also
part like earlier in the movie when he's just in the training, like, oh god, do I want to have
oh right. But I like that he's been collected and right, kind of like I'm the wise master the entire film. But when he sees Mary Jane, he just like loses it, right? And Gwen has to like, come on, we've got shit to do, more or less. So I like that.
Not getting any bread,
right? But I like that again, right? They could have easily like glossed over that, but they were like, no, he has his own issues. Let's address them right now.
Yeah. Like, I think if there were one big complaint about them, it would be the fact that I don't feel like Penny, Spider, Nick Cage got enough screen.
Yeah,
and that's fair. They didn't have their own kind of like Gwen and Miles had their own. Miles had his own. Gwen and Miles had their own, and Parker had his own.
And it's not even that I thought that they. It was just that, like you said, Gwen, Peter, and Miles more screen.
Yeah,
it was fleshed out as character.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of thrown in to have it. Even though I think really they could have just as well without them.
They could have what? Sorry, you cut in and out.
But I think that they could have done the whole film without those three characters.
Yeah.
Peter,
and that might have been
Gwen and Miles.
That might have been by design. Like, I definitely think your Peter Parker dealing with his issues, Gwen and Miles dealing with theirs. I definitely think there's more not structure. There's more content there. I think it'd be a little bit harder for Spider-Ham, in particular, if we're going on the opposite end, to have kind of an overarching story.
Yeah.
Spider-Nor maybe could have had something in there, and maybe Penny as well, but they didn't detract, but they didn't they didn't take away from anything.
I mean, they didn't add, and they added. They didn't take anything away by it.
Yeah. But I agree.
I was the whole time, or any time I saw them,
they had no. I want to know. I want to know more about them.
Yeah,
that's
I
fair.
would agree with that. Because they're so, everything is so colorful. You're just like, man, I want more.
Right.
But I feel like the only way to like successfully do that would have been to tack on some screen.
Right.
Yeah. Which isn't needed.
Yeah. The fight scenes in the Collider are really cool. Before Miles gets there, and then when he does, right, it's such a powerful moment, right? The other spider heroes are excited, and they're happy that he showed up, and that he's like, man, he's finally come into his own, or at least started to, right?
Yeah.
Those scenes were great.
That scene, it's like that's what. Even if I didn't already think it, that would be what solidifies it. That final battle could happen. Like it just.
The final battle, what, bro?
The final battle. Miles. Dimension. Things just going haywire.
Mm-hmm.
That couldn't live action.
Oh, fair enough.
Not to the same degree.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, then Doctor Strange was the closest thing we got to that.
Yeah, right.
Right.
I honestly feel this is where the movie starts to peter down. Like, this is the down point for me, because toward the end, it just played it by the numbers, and it wasn't. I don't know. It just kind of petered out for me.
I mean, or wrapping.
All I heard was, I mean, something wrapping up.
Yeah, that's all I heard.
I don't know why my connection is being stupid. No, it's just like, at that point, they're wrapping.
They're wrapping.
I think you've already hit all the high points.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying, like, I feel like they could have done like a little more or something. I don't know.
It's
I just
fine. I I love again. I love great choreography. Everyone got to show off their stuff. Seeing Peter fight alongside Miles and then also Gwen, right? And they were, helping each other out and teaming up. That was awesome.
Yeah.
The other thing, that's the other person, the villain I forgot. They had Osborn, but more or less Ultimate's Osborn, which is really cool. You get to see him in the big dragon form, right? Which would have been cool to see in Amazing Spider-Man, but they didn't. But that's fine. But no, that scene was great. And again, Brian, I agree with you. Like the whole dimension, like the dimensions colliding and everything freaking out, right? While they're fighting, there's just so many colors.
Yeah, I loved that part of the ever Peter trying to get Miles to just, you can't stay here, die. You have to go back.
Right. No, it was a great moment.
Like, yeah, I guess you're right.
Right. So he sends them all back, and even their flourishes, right? The bubbles that pop over there are the respective colors.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool to see Gwen and him say goodbye, and then Peter himself. He finally hit him with that sweeping leg kick, and then drops him in there, right? And it's kind of like even Peter's face shows like, okay, like you're gonna be okay, kid.
Like, you've got this.
Right. See, and then yeah, I liked the fight with Kingpin. Like I said, I liked the swirling colors, the changing, gravity more or less, and Miles takes a beat down, man. Right, like it's not easy for him. Right, Kingpin's still got years of fighting a better Spider-Man. Right, like so he definitely gets a beat down, which is kind of what Spider-Man does.
Yeah, I think I'd say like the plot point that I think could have been done better part with Ed. As far as like him, the switch in his head flipping to maybe
Spider-Man isn't bad.
Yeah, just because, not that there isn't a reason for it, since he sees him taking. He doesn't really have any context for why that's happened.
Yeah, it's kind of overlooked. I noticed that too.
Yeah, well, so if I had to extrapolate, right, it's right. They talk about Spider-Man. The only time he really talks about Spider-Man is before he dies, and he definitely has something against him, which most of the police officers do, right? I think they hit that point really well in Amazing Spider-Man with Dennis Quaid's character, where it's whole like, yeah, he's okay, but he's a vigilante. He's doing these things that he wants to do, right? The next time he sees, he rolls up on the house, right, and sees what's going on, or he sees some of what's going on at the house. And then he also finds his brother in the costume, right, in the Prowler costume, which I think, right, and they don't dive into it, but that kind of humanizes these people, right? It's less of it's just a guy in a suit running around doing what he wants and says, oh, for whatever reason, these people don these costumes, whether for good or bad. It hits a little bit more personally, right? Even though he doesn't know who's under that mask, it's a person, right? And he just knows that what Kingpin's doing is wrong, and this person is standing up to him, even when the previous Spider-Man is dead, right? Like, this guy died, but he's still, this new person, right, Miles, is willing to stand up and say, I'm going to keep fighting. So yeah, I agree with you. Like, it could have been handled a little bit better. Maybe a line or two could have been thrown in about that. But I was okay with it.
And I had an issue with it is because he saw Aaron.
Me and Sam heard because he saw Aaron.
He was Aaron.
Why is my connection like? I'm literally standing right next.
That's fair.
Standing neck? What's wrong with your neck?
Right. I heard you say you're standing next to your router.
Can you hear me?
Oh.
Yeah, that's fine.
Not really, but okay.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
But the last thing that he says whenever he sees Miles with Aaron.
EPB put on EPB. Okay. Well, his.
But like he says it with like animosity.
Well,
He
he saw
does.
his brother's dead, and the last person. I think their animosity is there because now it's personal. My brother's dead. The last person who was around that saw my brother die was this person in the Spider-Man costume. I want answers. I need to find this person, right? Not necessarily
Yeah,
I'm going to
but
kill him, but I
the
need to
thing that I'm
know.
saying is like I don't think that dots to
Fair
the
enough.
end point
Fair enough.
for him to not just be like bring Spider-Man.
And that's fine. Like I said, it's not perfect. I agree that something could have been added, even small, to kind of like the shift could have been a little more gradual. But
Bring me
again,
the
we can
head,
be super nitpicky.
Spider-Man.
That's fine. I don't mind
Yeah.
that.
Or like even if it had lead him to understand he was stopping King.
Right.
Because he doesn't even really have any did this at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying it's just saying it could have.
No, yeah.
If I were to find.
Um,
I'm just gonna guess what he said because I don't
I,
know.
I get the gist of it. It's fine. But Spider-Man beats Kingpin. I liked the scene where Kingpin sees all the different dimensions of his wife and kid, and right, they all have the same reaction that he's a monster for doing it. Like that's cool. I think.
Yeah.
Right. The problem he was trying to solve is actually made worse because they see him and doing what he's doing.
Poor guy.
Right. Spider-Man wins. The interaction with his dad is awesome. The whole hugs him, and he has the deeper voice, trying to thank you all. That was funny. And then the whole "I love you" was cool.
What?
Right. But that's really it, man. Like I said,
I also liked that they were doing the throwback to the beginning of his neighborhood and just high five.
Right.
Like, what's up?
Yeah.
Like I like the end with Peter.
The parallels there.
As Spider-Man.
Yeah. The city kind of accepts him, right? And even at the end, right?
He was just kind of.
Yeah. Well, he slips off the wall, and even then he's still not perfect, right? That's funny.
Yeah.
And he shouldn't be.
No, he shouldn't be. But that's cool. No, like I said, overall great movie. I like the little tease at the end where Gwen's voice comes back. So I think they will, right? With the success that it's had. I don't see them not continuing the universe. They might not necessarily always stick with Miles, because that's kind of the implication, right? They can do whatever they want. But
I heard through the grapevine that they're wanting to do a all-female cast of Spider-Verse, which I want.
That'd be
more.
cool. That'd be
Well, that's a different because they've got a Spider-Verse 2 and then they've also got the spin-off.
That's cool. No, hey, I'm game. Give me more.
Yeah,
as long as it's Silk, I'll be.
Yeah, so the female one should be Gwen, Silk, Aranya, maybe Penny again, and
Spider-Woman.
And probably Spider-Woman, yeah, which would be cool. But I like the implication that they're going to continue the story and that maybe Miles and Gwen are going to get together. Who knows? Who knows?
Everyone.
It better not
if
be
you've
another
read a comic book,
It better not be another Dresden and what's her face situation. I'd be mad.
I'm gonna be mad that two characters that are together. That seems.
I don't know what you said, but I'm gonna be mad.
What is with my connection?
Dude, I was also laughing super hard at the end when Spider-Man 2099 transfers to the comic meme Spider-Man.
There was an end scene? God damn it, I missed it.
Did you miss that scene? Oh my god.
It was 2099 Spider-Man. Cartoons.
Yeah, where they point at each other. I'm gonna have to send you that link.
Pointing at each other, and he was like, "You did it first."
Yeah, it's something small. It's just really funny.
And then there's a cop standing there. Who started this? And then standing there, he's like, "Spider-Man, obvious."
Right. No, it was fantastic. Like I said, overall a great movie.
Yes.
Soundtrack, style, all the characters, from start to finish, I loved it.
There isn't a single thing, presentation I dislike.
Yeah, presentation hands down.
Nonstop.
All All right, we'll start with the ratings. I'm gonna give mine first. 5 out of 5. No dispute from my end. Like I said, we can nitpick really small things that I could probably have an issue with, but from beginning to end, fantastic. I loved everything they did with Miles and all the additional characters. The style of the movie was shot in a way that I could watch again and again and just pay attention to the surroundings and get lost in the world they've established. Give me more. And it's weird. Sony fucking put out dumbass emoji movie, right? Not even like 3 years ago, right? And everyone was like, "Oh fuck, well, Sony's dead, right?" Like,
how is it Sony Animation can put out emoji movie and turn around and put out Spider?
Put this out.
It's because Spider-Man has good history that you can pull from. Emoji movie has what?
Have history, Sam?
It just has what? Eggplants.
Poop.
That too. Patrick Stewart. So stupid.
Right. So yeah.
Like, just imagine you're Patrick. Like, what is the low point of your career? Playing literal shit in a movie.
He wanted to do it, apparently.
Sorry.
There's an interview where he was talking about it. But this is a different story.
Yeah, and it's still, like Emoji Movie and one of the Smurfs animation pictures, like that. Did
they do Trolls?
Yes.
Trolls actually wasn't bad. I've heard. I haven't actually seen it. I'm just saying.
You say this.
Right. Actually. No, maybe they didn't do Trolls. The last one. So they did Hotel Transylvania, which I enjoyed. I thought it was good. Smurfs 2. They did Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 1 and 2, which were fantastic.
One was amazing.
Did they do Secret Life of Pets?
No, they did. So they did Goosebumps, the Emoji Movie, Peter Rabbit.
Terrible.
They haven't done a lot semi-recently, is what I'm saying. Emoji Movie to this, good fucking job, guys. Like, way to restore credibility.
Did they do what's it called? What's it called?
Despicable.
Angry Birds? There we go.
No.
Birds?
Oh, okay.
Maybe? No. I don't think so. Okay, so 5 out of 5 for me. Brian, go.
I'd give a few movies. Like, not that I don't films, but this was a few movies that I immediately.
Sam, I don't know if you heard Brian. I didn't.
I didn't either. I give.
Okay. Is it working?
Sure, go.
Just type it out and we'll like.
I don't want. No.
I'll read it in your stupid voice.
No, I said I'd give it a 5 out of
5 out of 5. Okay.
Because it was one of the few films that I don't enjoy Marvel movies. I walked out of the theater immediately.
So
immediately wanting to see it again?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, that's fine.
So you give it 5 out of 5 because it wasn't the Marvel Studios that made it, and it was a movie you wanted to see again. Is that right?
I'm giving it a 5 out of 5 because.
God damn it. We're moving on.
Is it breaking up?
Yes.
Is what breaking?
I have full bars.
Anyway. I already gave mine 9 out of 10.
No, it has to be out of 5, Sam.
Look, y'all were the ones that pushed for this 5.
I like the 5 system. I mean, you can give it a 4.5 out of 5. Again, my getting.
I'm not doing halves like that. I'll do 5 out of 5. It's just the ending was just kind of like, but,
whatever, Sam. Okay.
But like, it's really hard to like knock it down because of that, because it was still overall enjoyable, and you just want more. So
the big problem is about fucking.
The big problem is that we'll never hear what Brian says. That's fine. Okay, so at this point, if you want to stop listening, that's fine. We're giving our score. I want a separate side conversation real quick about Spider-Man in general. So feel free to stick around for that. Okay, so I have a question for you guys, and it's something that was posed. And the reason I want to talk about it because it relates to this Spider-Man story and the Spider-Man stories moving forward. So I read and or watched something about Tom Holland's Spider-Man, right? So the current MCU Spider-Man. And while they love
the Spider-Verse is going to tie into Far From Home.
No, shut up.
Venom is gonna tie into it.
Right. So while this person, again, I don't remember who it was. I'll try to find the video if it's a video and link it. They said that while Spider-Man was a great movie, right? Holland did great as Peter Parker, probably one of the better.
Homecoming.
Instances.
Refer to it as
Homecoming. Homecoming okay. Spider-Man was great. Great. Peter Parker presentation, right? Like Holland fills that gap between Andrew Garfield and Maguire very well. Story is well done. He fits into the MCU perfectly. He's got just a great movie, right? He posed an interesting thought, and while I do understand that universes can be their own thing, right? We've had this discussion, right? Like originally I was turned off from Gotham because Batman doesn't have interactions with these villains as a kid, right? They're all after he grows up, which is fine. I've gotten over that. It's its own story. This is a universe in which Bruce Wayne has interactions as a kid. That's fine. I can move past that. Right. It still stays central to a lot of the themes that the comic hits on. So one of the things that he brought up was that Holland's Parker has a very different experience than most of the Peter Parker characters we see out of the Spider-Man universes and the comics. And by that I mean, so, right, the reason people kind of relate to Spider-Man, he's, originally he was kind of nerdy, right? He's that sort of social outcast. He gets great power, and even then, right, he becomes a superhero, but he struggles, right? Like, he can't tell his family. He's constantly having to miss appointments for the people that he cares about. He's perpetually just barely breaking even with money. He struggles a lot in his life, right? Like, things don't just come easy to him. It's very much an effort that he has to continue to wear the Spider-Man mask and keep saving people even though he doesn't profit off of it and he still can't, like, live his own life, right? That's more or less a motive or a central kind of core story point for Spider-Man moving forward. We can agree on that, right?
Yes.
Wait, Brian came through, so I heard yes. Sam, we can agree on that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the point they brought up was that Holland's Parker, doesn't necessarily follow that same struggle, right? So, again, within his own universe, yes, his Uncle Ben dies. They don't hammer that origin home, which is fine. We don't need to see it again, right? They can reference it whenever they need to. But he knows Tony Stark, and Tony Stark is personally invested in him. So, right, in theory, moving forward, at some point, right, he could always just be like, hey, Tony, right? Not that he necessarily would, but that net is there when other Spider-Man iterations wouldn't necessarily be there. Additionally, right, Tony's like, here's a new suit. And yeah, when the suit is taken away from him, he has to deal with not having it anymore. But right, by the end of it, more or less, like, here's your suit, here's this awesome thing, keep going. And then even the Iron Spider suit, right, up front, very, very present, like, this is your future, is accepted into the Avengers fairly soon. Whereas previously Spider-Man, right, they were maybe he should, maybe he shouldn't kind of thing, right? Like, it wasn't always a guarantee.
There's different circumstances surrounding
and
it,
that's
though.
no, and yeah, that's what I want to talk about. Like, do those things necessarily take away from the original, like, reason that people latched on to Spider-Man, the relatability, or is that just thinking too far into it and he still kind of captures that same thing? Just like you said, the circumstances might be a little different. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Brian, go.
I don't know if you can actually hear.
I mean, we'll get what we can.
Sometimes.
I don't understand. But I don't. Sam, go.
Okay, so here's my take, I guess, to defend.
Oh, and real quick, sorry. The reason I connected to the Spider-Man is because Spider-Man very quickly establishes that this guy, that Miles, right? He struggles. He comes from a poor family, and he has his problems that he has to deal with. His uncle dies, right? All those things we talked about in the movie that make it great for his character development. Like those things he has, and Tom Holland's doesn't necessarily have those same things. So go. Sorry.
Is this any better?
I mean, possibly.
So far. To hit on the point, I guess, to defend Tom Holland's Spider-Man, right? I think that it's okay for Tom Holland's position to be where he's at because of two things. One, the legend of Spider-Man is so big, potentially everybody knows it, really well. Everybody at least has an idea of his backstory and his problems and stuff like that. Kind of like Batman. He's larger than life, right? His story is well known. The other thing is that Marvel is taking it over, and Marvel seems to establish that they want to create a universe that it's, I don't want to say more for the fans of comics, but they take a huge part of that into consideration. So yes. I feel like Tom Holland's portrayal is more so for your fans rather than, just going through the same motions like they do with Batman. Like, oh, it's tragic backstory. You know what I mean? I think that's the difference and the reason for it.
So if y'all can actually hear me, and if you're okay with it, I'll go ahead and continue from there, Sam.
Go ahead.
No, this is really good. I can hear it.
So, I agree with that point. I think that the reason that Tom Holland's Spider-Man works so well is because of the comic background. Like, I agree that him getting the suits is kind of a cop-out, but it's also an acceleration because they're bringing him into a universe that's already established, so he has to be on the same playing field.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a few things that forward determine what that relationship would be. Like, number one, is Tony actually going to make it through Endgame?
That's what, I was like, he's going to die because technically he's the uncle now.
Fair enough, right?
Yeah. Because if Tony dies, like, that kind of leaves Peter back at square one.
Right, okay.
But also, I mean, obviously we know that Peter has to come back in some form or fashion if he's got a new movie coming.
Right.
But yeah, I think that I agree with Sam in that Tom Holland's iteration of Spider-Man is very heavily drawn from the comic book universe, and he's very much made for the fans.
Mm-hmm.
So any contest to that typically is going to come from people that aren't as heavily invested in Spider-Man's backstory.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Like I said, my thing is just I think he did, whoever it was, provide an interesting point if the struggles weren't the same. But like I said, it's an established story.
But also, it's not like he just got that suit in the first Spider-Man movie,
right?
Because he did have it taken away. Like, Tony very much told him he had to earn it.
Right.
Yeah.
So he worked for it. He didn't work for it as hard as some of the other Spider-Men have.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony's no slacker.
Yeah.
Tony is no slacker. Right. He might be a lot of things, but he's not a slacker. So he would expect the same from.
That's fair.
His protege or something.
Okay.
So.
And like I said, I just thought it was an interesting question. Like I said, this movie very quickly establishes that Miles has issues, and Holland's right in the movie. All right, well, he misses a spelling bee or math thing, whatever. Right, like all right.
Well, I think they're also introducing them as two very different characters,
and that's fine.
Well.
No, yeah. I just
because whereas Miles is like a kid from the streets that's trying to overcome the odds that have been placed against him. Peter is more of a character that's like a child prodigy, and he's having everything handed.
Right.
Almost.
Like I said, even then, but Peter struggles later, right? Like I said, he's constantly living in shitholes, and Mary Jane might or might not marry him, right? Like all that shit. Can't hold it.
But also, they've kind of set Spider-Man: Homecoming pretty lighthearted ending. Like things have been. Peter, they've definitely set it up to a point where he could experience major tragedy later.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah, once it also goes back to like brokering deals and things like that, where it's like, hey, we plan to make 3 more movies. Okay, well, Marvel's really good about expanding out their characters over movies, like fucking seeing Stark deal with PTSD in the third
Mm-hmm.
movie is a huge part of why I like 3 so much.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and
I
like
guess I'll hold judgment until I
seeing
see.
Tony, like seeing Tony having to watch Peter die. Like, imagine if Peter comes back and he has to watch Tony die.
Yeah.
Right. I guess I'll wait to see what happens with the second movie. Yeah, I will say judging it super harshly on the first one isn't super fair, right? Because even Peter, right, the
Yeah.
second one really establishes like, hey, I have a lot of problems, and maybe the Spider-Man thing isn't what I want. That's fair. In release,
And that's also another thing with this movie is the fact, like, you can't just judge it on the Spider-Man home film because he's very heavily tied into the Avengers, so you have to take both of those together.
right?
That yeah.
Well, that's fair.
Circumstances, like I said.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I just wanted to pose the question because I thought it was an interesting. Again, not necessarily that I agreed with it, just it was interesting, an interesting presentation. I will say that I want to see a continuing trend of characters like this. I know I see some people, and it's a small minority, right? At least from what I can tell. Like, I don't have any problems with different people wearing the mantle, right? I've seen some people, right? Brian, we talked about this, about how like people got all pissy because like in Champions, right, the Hulk is now Amadeus Cho, right? And people...
What I'm kind of curious about, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
no.
but what I'm kind of curious about is whether or not they're going to be bringing Miles into Homecoming universe since they've already introduced Aaron.
It is interesting.
So it'd be interesting if we end up having a Spider-Verse Miles and Miles in.
I'm super down for it. But yeah, what I was saying was so we've talked about it, Brian. I think even me, you've
passing
talked
of the
Sam.
torch.
Yeah, but people get all like, well, why does Spider-Man have to be biracial, or why does Hulk have to be Chinese now? Why can't they just have his own? They should have their own characters. And it's like,
because if you just introduce them as characters, would like them.
Right. And
I don't. What's the problem with having diversity? Why not flesh out the world?
Because we live in where people think that if you have diversity, you're just
pandering.
Yeah, you're just pandering to the audience.
And so that also, if you really want to go in a more philosophical approach toward that also depends on like intent versus outcome as well.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's frustrating, and I agree, Sam.
No,
it's frustrating that you can't have these characters that people like. Oh, it's just. It's like, is it really though? Like, aren't people just different in the world? Why can't they just be different in movies?
Right.
Yeah.
And like I said, for me, I was super like, right, and it's turned into this conversation, right? It makes me happy, right? I saw Black Panther, and what it did for minority communities, seeing people super stoked to see someone that they could relate to, culturally, or even, right? Just they look like them, right?
Yeah.
And that carries a lot for people, especially the younger generation moving forward, right? But even Miles, right, biracial, his mother speaks Spanish, he speaks Spanish, right? I can relate to some of that. I don't necessarily know a lot of Spanish as fluently as my family, but I grew up around that environment. And at 27, like it affects me differently, but I can at least look at it and say, man, I can only imagine what it'd be like to be a kid, to grow up, right, be 9-10 years old and see this movie. And be like, oh man, like, I've seen Peter Parker forever, but this kid Miles, like, I can relate to him more. I understand the struggles that he, right? It feels more like closer, right? And that sparks that could potentially spark someone to get into comics and create their own stories. Like, it just you don't take away, in my opinion. It doesn't take away when you diversify like that. Like, right, if anything, it adds, and it gets more people into it to say, man, we all love this art form.
Like, really, business stand makes more, which is why Marvel.
Cut in and out there, B. Sorry.
I was saying that from a business, it makes more sense is bringing in a larger audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what Marvel's at is the bottom.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, we touched on it before. Ultimately, the business side of things, it's like about money. But like I
I
said,
don't.
it matters. Like I said, it matters. Like I said,
I, it does matter, and I don't know. I mean, this is a story that a lot of people in the Star Trek community know a lot about, but freaking I cannot remember her name, but the girl that played oh god, I'm blanking all over the
wow,
place.
you're not a real Trek fan. You fucking poser.
Some Trekkie you are.
Right?
In
Turn your tickets in to the convention. You can't go anymore.
Might as well
Been
put
revoked.
on your red shirt now.
Uhura
Zoe Saldana
on
playing Uhura.
no, not her.
Oh, the original one.
Nichelle Nichols. Nichelle
Okay.
Nichols, like being out, just being a
On the show.
having a presence on the show. Yeah, like being up there on the main bridge had such an impact, and it hadn't. I mean, we wouldn't, for better or for worse, your opinion on Whoopi Goldberg now, but we wouldn't have Whoopi Goldberg in our culture if Nichelle Nichols wasn't on screen, because Whoopi Goldberg was like really inspired by her, even though she, she wasn't really doing much, but just the
it was
fact
a
that
major impact on the industry.
yeah.
And,
So it is important, no matter what people say. It's
and I agree. Like I said, coming from, I've heard some people be like, good for people of color and Black Panther, like, but I also want to see more representation. And I think if you're someone who's looking for something a little different, like I said, this has it for you, and that's why when someone was asking about the Blue Beetle, right, and they were like, "Do you want?" I don't even remember the original guy's name, or Jaime. I want Jaime. I grew up with Jaime on the cartoons and in the comics. I want to see that story told because again,
just feel like that character works better as a younger character.
Yeah, no, I agree. But yeah, like I said, this is all side stuff. I just wanted to kind of.
I'd be entirely down for Amadeus Cho to show up and let Bruce go.
Dude, what if Spider-Verse can build into Champions?
Champions?
That'd be dope.
Awesome.
Right?
I'd love to see one champion happen so bad.
Right. But that's all I really had. Like I said, those two things I wanted to talk about. Like I said, I know we typically like the Holland Spider-Man versus animated, and then just like I said, briefly touch on the representation thing, just because I think, like I said, for me,
I really don't think it's fair to compare the two because there's such drastic.
That's fine.
Circumstances.
I still think that Raimi is the weakest Spider-Man.
Fair enough.
At this point, you're probably
Raimi's also a shit director because of.
Well, just like I don't know. I went and watched them recently, and I don't think.
I think there are moments in those films that still work really well, and I appreciate, just like the X-Men movies, I appreciate it bringing what we have now, right? Like you pay respects to those that came before you, right? Like, so yes, at the time they were amazing, and
at the time
they brought they moved the industry forward, and they really brought into people's minds, hey. For studios, it was, hey, can we make money off this? But for fans, it was like, wow, you can tell this story and it still feel like the comic, right? So pay respects to it. Again, on watching it again, some of the parts are cringy.
Nobody should ever pay respect to evil Spider-Man, Dan.
Oh, well,
they did.
They
what
did.
Are you talking about?
And we laughed about it.
So, yeah.
They didn't. It wasn't paying respects.
It was acknowledging it. It was saying, "Hey."
How was it not?
It was saying, "Hey, we did this. Okay, let's all laugh about it."
It was
and move
parody.
Forward. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's a form of flattery. So
yes,
but
we aren't all acknowledging that it was a good moment. We're acknowledging hilariously bad.
Whatever.
I'm just glad that we can all laugh about it now, instead of feel like ragey about it,
cringing, right? But no, like I said, I think this. So overall, like I said, small minority of people about the whole different people representing established characters. But like I said, I've seen stuff about it, and I'm just like,
can we just drop the Venom sequel and put Venom into Spider-Verse?
No, I want Venom 2. I want it to be stupid. I want to enjoy it. Why do you ruin everything I love, Q?
What was the name of that Venom story? No, it wasn't Venom. It was Carnage Island or whatever.
There's a Spider Island.
Was it Spider Island? It might have been Spider Island. But there was one where like a whole bunch of Carnages just got out and started. And I don't remember the name of it.
Oh, we'll have to look it up.
They started what?
It might have been Spider
Island. Any final thoughts before we call it a day?
It's definitely, I will say, it's 100% a movie you need to see in theaters. Like, you have to, because this is a good representation as to why movies are just great all around, and visually, like, you're gonna love it, unless you hate color, then in which case.
So if you're Nicolas Cage,
right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Q, any last?
We covered.
If anything, I'll probably cut out anyway, so it's not important. All right.
Yeah. See.
Great fucking movie. Go see it. Lots of reasons to love it, and like that's it. It expands on the mythos of Spider-Man. It gives us Miles Morales. Credit to everyone that got this movie made. And in touching on what you said about the horror thing, Sam, shout out to, in my opinion, Donald Glover, right? I think that moved some wheels. I don't know what the word is. It got people talking about Miles Morales way more than I think originally would have been, and help get this movie made. I don't know. I'm done. I'm rambling.
Right. I'm upset that we're getting Mysterio and far from a Prowler.
I'm not, because I've been wanting to see Mysterio live action.
Yeah, I want to see Mysterio too.
Yeah.
Like 2 out of this group we just said.
Yeah. Go fuck yourself, Brian. All right. Next one we'll probably do is Aquaman with Jason Momoa, and
Jason Momoa.
After that, I think it's
have a tall, dark glass of Jason Momoa.
After that, it's Captain Marvel and Avengers.
John.
Shazam doesn't come out before
Endgame,
then, right?
Endgame.
No.
I can't wait.
Okay, just making sure. Not that I give a shit about that. We'll see what happens.
I still think they shouldn't just called it Annihilation.
Shut up, Brian.
Maybe they could set up Annihilation.
They better.
Hey, all I'm saying is that Spider-Man has, even though it was animated, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse established that you can mash dimensions together and have a story. So Marvel needs to fucking pay attention and say, all right, Secret Wars, done. And then we can move forward.
I mean, they're already setting up Secret Invasion. I'm just hoping they don't kill that entire story arc with Captain Marvel.
I'll give them credit. I'll give them credit that they've earned after 10 years to say they probably won't squash it, because they're hopefully smarter than that. At this point, they've established that they can make smart decisions.
Because, I mean, setting up Skrull on pretty much out for every single character you killed in.
And Brian died. Okay.
God damn.
All that was say.
I heard setting up Super Skrull establishes that all the other characters.
Setting up Skrull on Earth just lets you get away with whatever with the characters you killed in.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, you can kill whoever because they were just Skrull and they're actually alive. Yeah.
Exactly.
Not my Captain America.
Right.
My Captain America.
But all right.
My Captain.
I think that's it. Go watch the movie. All right. Everybody say bye.
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 Adios.